everybody, how you doing? I'm Ben Griffith, and this is the Ben Griffith Breakdown. So in today's episode, we are going to be talking about the presidential immunity case that just came down from the Supreme Court this week. The reason I want to get into this on an episode is there is a lot of hysteria and hyperbole flying around about this case. There's a lot of people out there who are very upset about this and denouncing it and throwing around comments like, we now have a king and the president can do anything he wants and all these other things. And the people saying these things are either ignorant to the findings of this case, ignorant to constitutional procedure, how government works and what the guardrails of the Constitution are, or they are intellectually and ideologically dishonest people with a clear political agenda. And you'll see that as you start watching these people and listening and see who says what. So what I want to do today is kind of just clear things up and get into the bare facts of this finding. So again, let's get into it. First and foremost, what I need people to understand is nothing in this finding by the Supreme Court affords additional powers to the President of the United States. It simply says that president cannot be held liable criminally for anything that is an official act of the president. And one of the things that I like that the Supreme Court did here is that they did not determine in their finding what is an official act and what is not an official act. They left that to the lower courts. So whichever court is, adjudicating that crime, they get to determine within that procedure if it's an official act and whether it's not. So for instance, Donald Trump is being tried in DC for election interference. And the judge presiding over that, Judge Chutkan, is now going to, because of this finding, have to take that into consideration and determine whether these were official acts or unofficial acts. And if they were official acts, the case gets thrown out. But if they were unofficial, it moves forward as normal. And I'm glad that they're doing that because official acts and official acts are not black and white things. They're very nuanced. And I think it should be determined in a case by case basis. And I'm glad they're doing it that way. So again, there's a lot of hysteria, a lot of hyperbole that's been going along with the reaction so far. You're watching the news, you're on Twitter. And again, you're going to hear things like the president's now a king and Trump can kill his political opponents. And now that Biden has ultimate power, he should dissolve the court and prohibit felons from running from office and make all guns illegal and forgive all student debt and delay the election until Trump's trials are over and all this other, for lack of a better term, bullshit, right? There is a huge, huge difference between not being tried criminally for your actions and your actions still needing to go through the proper steps mandated by the Constitution. And let me assure you, all the guardrails of the Constitution are still very, very much in place. If the president told the Navy SEALs to go assassinate his political opponent, the Navy would say, no, we're not doing that. That's illegal. It would be referred to Congress, and that president would be impeached. And I think one of the things that we're just running right past in this whole argument is that the ability to impeach a president is still very, very much in place. And this finding by the Supreme Court has zero impact on that whatsoever. So again, the ability to remove a rogue president with Article 2, Section 4 is still a very viable option if needed and is just another guardrail in place for the Constitution. So again, if Biden tried to make all guns illegal tomorrow, through executive order, it would go up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court would immediately say, no, that's against the Constitution. You can't do that. It's illegal. And it would get knocked down and he couldn't do that. So there are still three branches of government in place. All the checks and balances of those three branches of government are still very much in place. And again, nothing about this finding creates additional powers for the president. It just says you can't find him criminally liable unless, it's an unofficial act. So all of these hyperbolic theories are not based in reality. They have no realistic likelihood of coming to pass based on the findings of this case. And now that liberals got a finding from this court that they disagree with, we've circled back and now we are back to the expand the court argument that they put in place every time they don't like a finding. So, guys, if you hear somebody say, expand the court, you hear somebody make that argument on Twitter, on the news, anywhere, you can instantly disregard everything else that that human has to say. I compare it to trying to convince me that the earth is flat. Someone tries to make that argument to me, I instantly refuse to acknowledge every other opinion that comes out of that person's mouth because they are that ignorant. So let's get just kind of the history on this. Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who is a saint amongst liberals in the court, said her quote was, 9 seems to be a very good number. This has been a standard number on the court for over 150 years. And first of all, to do this, it would take 2/3 of Congress. You couldn't get 2/3 of Congress to save a kitten right now, never mind expand the court. Secondly, and more importantly, this is a short-term and a short-sighted solution to your grievance at this point. Because let's just say you expanded it to 15. Well, over the next 20, 30 years, conservatives could take that over again and have a 10-5 majority, and it doesn't fix your problem except for doing it right today. Also, on top of that, conservatives could get into power and expand that to 20. And, you can see how this quickly snowballs out of control and diminishes the sovereignty of this court very, very quickly. So, simply stated, a majority is a majority is a majority, regardless of whether it's 9 judges or 20. And it's been widely accepted that 9 is the right number. And again, has been right for 150 years. And the fact that you lost one case does not give you the right to overturn 150 years of precedent and what everyone widely believes is the correct number of judges. So all these people out there who are spewing these crazy theories and calling for impeachment of judges and expanding the court and all this, they fail to realize a very, very simple truth, and that truth is this. Presidents already had immunity from civil charges. This just gives them immunity from criminal charges as well. No other president in our history has been brought up on charges other than Nixon for crimes that they committed as president. And the reason for that is it just went without saying you don't go after presidents. There's a certain reverence that goes along with that position. We've never needed a finding like this because it just wasn't thought of. Obama killed Americans in drone strikes by accident that weren't supposed to be killed. FDR put Japanese Americans in internment camps. Bill Clinton lied to Congress. I mean, you could go back. There's a number of presidents who did criminal things out there and nobody ever went after them. And in fact, President Ford pardoned Nixon for his crime because he, again, recognized this unspoken reverence that goes along with being president of the United States and realized the damage it would do to our country to have a former president with a criminal record. So that was all thrown out the window when Donald Trump ran for president and was brought up on charges that would never, ever, ever in a million years have been brought if he was not running for president. And I'm not going to go into that too deep, but go back and watch my video on the hush money trial. It's absolutely ridiculous. And we broke a pretty sacred precedent in this country, and opened Pandora's box that, is going to be very hard to close at this point. So, simple fact is our judicial system was used as a political hammer, and it inevitably made its way to the Supreme Court. There's no way that you're going to bring up a former president on 88 felony charges, and it wasn't one or many of those were not going to make their way to the Supreme Court of the United States. And if not for this blatant abuse, this immunity case would never have come to pass. So while it may not be the answer, there needed to be a response to the question of how do we curtail future legal malfeasance inside of our political system? And so basically many of the people complaining about this finding, I hate to say it, but they brought it on themselves. So, in short, guys, don't buy into the hysteria on this. All this talk about Donald Trump is now going to be a dictator, a king, and it's all nonsense. The Constitution was written in a very, very specific way with the specific intent to prevent these things, to prevent kings, to prevent dictators. It had guardrails built in. And this finding, again, does not remove those guardrails in any way, shape, or form. So president still needs to go through the process as usual and can still be impeached at any time by Congress if he gets out of hand. We're going to hear a lot about this from now until November. But again, don't buy into the hype. It's nothing more than a political talking point by people who either have no idea what they're talking about or are outright political activists. And it's nothing more than a shiny coin to distract the American people from everything that's going on in this country right now. So, guys, I'm going to leave it there, but please share this as much as possible. There is a ton of disinformation on this out there right now, and I think that we need more alternate reality on this, for lack of a better term, to let people know what's actually happening with this finding. As usual, I would love to hear your thoughts, comments, and questions in the comments section, and I will get to what I can. And I appreciate you tuning in, guys. Thanks. Until next time.